The following episode of the Comics and Crypto podcast is for informational purposes only, and anything expressed by the hosts or their guests is solely their opinion. This podcast does not constitute financial advice, and anyone wishing to invest should seek their own independent financial or professional help. Have fun and enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Sean O'Hare, and I know comics.
Hi, I'm Spencer Vogel, and I know crypto.
Hi, I'm Kevin Lee Loader, and I don't know shit. This is the Comics and Crypto podcast.
Comics and crypto, crypto and comics, collectors world in a digital age. Comics and crypto, crypto and comics, it's where the next billionaires will be made. It's comics and crypto.
So what have been some of the most notable comic sales that have happened on Goldin Auctions in the past?
Well, I mentioned Detective 27. We sold that 6.5 for 1.74 million. They also privately brokered the sale of an Action Comics 160. It's called the Rocket copy because it has like a kid got one of those little rubber stamps and stamped a rocket onto it. That sold for $3.4 million, which is a record for that grade, which is crazy. We sold a Superman 130 for 720,000. What else? A little less high end. There was an Avengers number 8, which is the first appearance of Kang the Conqueror, who's going to be big soon in the MCU.
Looks amazing.
That was a 9.8. It sold for 54,000. And then an 80s book, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 1, first print in 9.8. That sold for $264,000.
That's a record sale to this date.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's anything higher in the GP. So yeah, we've set some pretty high bars for different books.
And recently, Goldin just opened up a marketplace for fixed price collectibles. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of selling the collectibles on the marketplace? Maybe what are some of the requirements?
It's still very new to everybody. Like, we're still in the first couple of weeks of the fixed price marketplace. So there are some kinks getting ironed out. As far as I'm aware, you can only sell graded items on the marketplace. To have your book listed on the marketplace, it has to be in Goldin's hands. You can't just like take a picture of it and send a picture to the website and just list it. And you know, we found by observing other companies and what they've been doing, we found quite often someone would, it's not quite a bait and switch, but they'll have sold the book somewhere else but forgotten to remove the listing, and then someone tries to buy it, and then it's us that looks bad because our customers complaining that they didn't get what they just paid for. And so I believe the rule is that the book has to be graded. It has to be in Goldin's vault, which is this secure way of storing your collectibles. I know they do this for cards as well. Mm-hmm. So if you put your graded comic books or cards in the Goldin vault, it's insured and secure and everything else. Some people get very anxious. They have a 6-figure item sitting around their house or in a safety deposit, even a safety deposit box, you know, like in a bank. Things happen, like fires happen, robberies happen, like you know, you never know. And quite often these things are, I know plenty of collectors who pay cash for everything. And so their insurance company is not going to pay up if something happens to that item. So having a company like Goldin looking after your things in a secure, safe, fireproof, insured environment. So to move it from the vault to the marketplace is quite simple in your Goldin account. Once it's in the marketplace, you can accept offers on it and have a buy it now price. And then Goldin handles the shipping and everything. It's just taken care of for you. So it's a fairly seamless experience. And the same is true of our weekly auctions, which have just started as well around about the same time. The weekly auctions are $5 starting bids on any item. So whether it's worth $500,000 or $5,000 or $50, it starts at $5 and it runs for 7-9 days. And again, the books have to be with Goldin before you can list them for sale. So we're trying to learn from the mistakes other people have made and get it right from the beginning. And it's so far so good. I mean, I'm sure there will be moments where we're like, oh, we didn't think of that, but we're figuring this stuff out and we'll do it well. We'll do it very well.
Yeah, it's incredibly exciting seeing the different price options. You know, you're going to be able to intrigue a lot of collectors, new collectors, veteran collectors to get involved because of the different price ranges.
Yeah, one of the sort of criticisms or at least observations about Goldin has been it's been like a boutique for high-end collectors in the past. So we're great at getting the 6-7 figure items, but maybe we weren't offering enough to these like collectors who are a bit more beginning of their journey, or they just have lower goals or lower budgets. And I think this will address that. You know, we'll give a collector the chance to become a more advanced collector over time, which is how most of us do graduate, right? You start by buying dollar books at a garage sale, and you know, you end up buying Fantastic Four #1, and so along the way, there's a path, right? And very few people go, okay, I'm going to take $1 million and sink it into a comic book. No, you usually start small and work your way up. And so Goldin has lacked that kind of offering to the lower end of the market, but we're addressing that with this now. And I think so far it's been very positive. Lots of activity in the weekly auctions, and yeah, things are doing well. And most of the time things sell for fair market value, don't they? I mean, like two collectors, it only takes two collectors who go, that should be $1,000. It's only at 600. I'm going to bid. Gets to $1,000. That's how it works.
Exactly. It was really fun recently. Last at San Diego Comic-Con back in July, I had a chance to hear Todd McFarlane talk about his story of buying the Mark McGwire home run baseball, the 70th home run baseball. And it was between him and one other person. And he was in his kitchen putting the bids in New York, when this one guy sitting in the audience was bidding. And then you have everybody in the audience root for this guy. They had no idea who was on the phone, but they're just rooting for this guy. So there's just two guys bidding for this baseball. And apparently the other guy's budget was around 1.2, 1.3 million. And because he asked him afterwards, but Todd McFarlane ended up buying it for $3 million, a little over $3 million. The ball is probably not worth, quarter of that today, unfortunately. But he got a lot of press out of it. And he was able to go around and talk about his company and what they're doing. And that's remarkable. He's doing great. Todd's doing great.
Yeah, I don't think Tom McFarlane's going to worry about the value of that baseball.
No.
It was so funny though, Ash. He was saying that when we got to almost 3 million, his wife, who's a phenomenal person, I had a chance to meet her as well in New York Comic Con.
Yeah.
And she looked at him and just walked right out of the kitchen. That's it. She walked right out.
That must have been an interesting evening after that. Yeah. So that boat that we were going to buy next year, honey.
So going back to the story I mentioned earlier about having a chance to buy Fantastic Four 1, and unfortunately slipped through my fingers. I told myself, because the digital comics were dropping on VEVE, which are licensed NFTs of the physical counterparts. And I told myself that if that ever happens, if FF1 ever drops, I'm going to go pretty hard on it, because I knew of the value of the physical comic. And sure enough, it did. And I had a chance to buy a low minted secret rare, which we'll dive into details of that in a bit. But it's been a blessing to own that comic ever since I had a chance to buy it. What are your thoughts on NFT comics being dropped on VEVE and Palm NFT as well? They're dropping DC comics. They recently dropped Superman #1 as well. Have you had a chance to look into that market?
Not really. I haven't. It's difficult for me in the same way that these modern cover variants can become extremely valuable. It's difficult for me to understand how a collector values something like that, because it's not something I have a close association with. I'm not really clued into how this all works. And so for me, the idea of scarcity isn't manufactured. Scarcity for me is something that happens just organically. Like, for example, some crazy German writes a book, then a bunch of people have bonfires in town squares and burn a bunch of comic books, and they become rare. I mean, you could plan for that, but that would be a pretty elaborate way to make something scarce. Like, for me, I'm more interested in things like the ET cartridges that were buried in landfill, and someone actually dug through the landfill and recovered some of them. Things like that story to me is like, wow, that's just crazy. And then someone actually wants to buy that afterwards. So I'm keeping a close eye on this. I think it's an interesting development. I don't know yet how that's going to play out over time, but I admire the early adopters who have the vision like you do to recognize that, oh no, this is going to be, trust me, this is going to be a big thing. And I'll probably be like I kind of was with Bitcoin, going, oh, I wish I'd thought of joining in with that when it first happened. I would invest in them. I would be very selective. So I love the fact that you recognize Fantastic Four #1 is something that you wanted to be part of. Superman 1 sounds like something I should own. I don't know. Like I'm a little cautious just because of the number of stories you hear about people who've invested in all kinds of weird things, sometimes for millions of dollars that now not even exist.
Mhm.
I think like the Second Life thing that was this big video game, cross between a multi-user game and real estate investing. People were buying digital islands and then selling the rights to farming and mining and stuff, and people were spending real money on this. It wasn't just like $25, $50. It was like something like 300 grand, I think someone paid for something, or 3 million. It was crazy. And I remember at the time thinking, well, what about all those video games that used to be a big thing and then the company just abandoned them? You know, like, and there's no regulation. Like if World of Warcraft, I don't even know if that's still a thing, but if it were still a thing and they sold you a pub in World of Warcraft for 100 grand, who's to say that World of Warcraft will still be a thing in 10 years time and your 100 grand just gone up in smoke? So I'm a little concerned about NFTs from that perspective, but I'm also ignorant about it. So I'm not a naysayer. I'm just a little cautious about it. But I can see the benefits of it. I can see the reasons why people would find that interesting. And I'm not saying I would never put my money into it, but I wouldn't be an early adopter just because I'm a little cautious about being an early adopter in general.
That makes sense. Yeah, just to your last point about that. I mean, you are seeing now there's NFTs of digital land in these big metaverses where people are spending millions of dollars for these. I'm like, especially with the gaming piece of it, like the really cool thing about NFTs is that you actually have true ownership of them. Whereas like in a lot of these, video games that you've seen in the past, you're the assets that you own in that video game are just, a record on that company's gaming server. And if that game did shut down, you would lose those. Whereas with NFTs, you actually have true ownership of those assets. They live in your blockchain wallet. And if the game developer decided to stop supporting the game, any other game developer could decide to then support those assets again. And they basically can adopt a whole new community that already owns them, who are interested and, have a financial incentive to get involved. And, so there is some longevity to these assets that I think weren't really possible with Web 2.
Right. Yeah. That's a very good point. I've watched millionaires and come and go and, like, I don't know any person. I know one person who's an influencer who was being paid an enormous, for a 20-year-old, an enormous amount of money to promote NFTs for a while, and then he suddenly wasn't. And so that makes me think, there's a lot of money that's moved in and then out again at that space, Bitcoin as well, and all those currencies that have had their moment and have waned a bit. And I just wonder, will people who bought stuff at the top of that market ever trust that market again? Like if you were the person that spent 50 grand on a digital AF15 and it's now worth 9, are you ever going to say, wow, I want to get back into that space? It's going to be hard. Like the people who are the most vocal are often the ones who've lost their shirt, and so I think it's going to develop over time. I think it's fascinating. I think I love the fact that there are different levels for each comic book. I love that. I'd love to see more crossover between comic book creators and those comic books. So I don't know, let's say Todd McFarlane, let's say he created a unique cover that was a 1 of 10 or something, and they went up for auction. So then people could set their own tolerance on what those are worth. To me, that's a way of creating scarcity in this space that could be really valuable in the long run. I don't know, but I mean, I got lots of ideas about it. I just don't know if I'm confident enough yet to risk my own money on it. But I think it's something that Goldin should get involved in. I think this, the adoption of digital collectibles like that by established market players like Goldin would be useful, because it would show the bigger audience, oh yeah, wow, they're backing this. So it's something that actually has legs. It's going to be around for a long time. There's true value here. It's not just a passing fad. So I think it's something that's going to develop over time for sure. And I can see why this will become a big thing.
I mean, and I think just like how seriously Marvel has taken the relationship. Like VEVE has been sharing a booth with Marvel, for like the last 2 big comic conventions, New York Comic Con and San Diego Comic Con. So like, they're definitely taking it seriously. And at least for me, that's like a big sign that, hopefully there's going to be some longevity to this market.
It was pretty remarkable, Ash, going to Comic-Con, and I've had a chance to get to know a lot of influencers that are physical comic book market. They're skeptical about the digital collectible space, and going there and talking to them in person, and they're like, "Oh shit, okay, that's like front and center. There's VEVE and Marvel, and that's pretty remarkable." And that kind of turned their heads a little bit. But to add to your point, we really believe that 98% of the NFTs and digital collectibles in the market right now are probably going to crash and burn. But the ones that are going to survive and thrive are the licensed collectibles, the ones with the biggest brands. That's why we only focus majority of for myself personally on VEVE, because they're all licensed collectibles from Marvel, from Disney. The best part about these collectibles is accessibility, because physical comic books, I have friends in certain parts of the world, they can't get mail easily. They have corrupt mailing systems. So it's hard for them to get collectibles, but I can send them these digital comics. So accessibility is really, really big. And also just seeing people, how excited they are about collecting after they get involved in the space. Now they're buying physical comic books. Now they're going to conventions. And it's amazing. And talking to them about this in person and say, this is my first comic convention. I'm 55 years old and I've never bought a comic book in my life. Now I own 10 grails, physical grails, and I'm going to comic book shows. I never thought my life would come to this, but it's because I got involved in the digital market. And that's awesome. And that's what we're excited about, because we're very much excited about the physical space as much as the digital. But we really believe there's a strong connection there. And especially for the digital comic books, they're counterparts of the physical. But that being said, we don't think there's a competition. We think they're both going to help lift each other up over time, because it's really marketing the same IP. People are investing in the same IP.
Marvel and DC could find a way to offer an additional benefit for people who buy the digital version of the comic book.
And that's utility. And I love that you said that.
Create a variant or something, like that only is given, a physical copy is given to the owner of that.
Yes, exactly. I love that.
Initial owner.
Exactly.
And I could totally see something like that happening, because with all the VEVE comics that drop, the ultra rare, which is basically the number 4 rarity out of 5, is a VEVE exclusive cover. So it's a brand new cover that's been drawn by a comic book artist, usually a contemporary artist. And so that's something that that cover only exists in the digital space right now, and never has existed in the physical space. And because those are fairly limited, I could totally see them eventually creating physical versions of those as well.
Yeah, you could maybe see a point of the problem would be if someone traded the NFT that they would still have the physical comic.
There are ways where I've seen Artifact Studios is a big company in the the metaverse and NFT space that focus on digital fashion, and they've created technology with NFC chips where you can actually link your NFT to your physical goods, like a physical pair of sneakers or a physical sweatshirt or something like that. So I think there's definitely a lot of ways that you can do that and almost use the NFT as like a proof of authenticity for the physical as well.
I think maybe something like a crossover between this digital kind of ownership thing and a more traditional investing. That could be interesting. An EFT based on NFT comic books. So instead of just buying an FF1, you could actually own a basket of shares in different ones.
Yeah.
And so you're not exposed to the fluctuations of just one so extremely. You could benefit from rising and limit your risk to falling prices by having.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
I like that.
I think that kind of fractional ownership and risk exposure thing hasn't really come into the collectible space that much. I mean, there are some very strictly private things like marketing, artwork, like so fine art is contained in a private EFT, but people can't invest if they don't have $1 million of liquid assets, and you have to qualify, and it's all very strictly regulated, and so it's only available to the super rich, and it just seems like that kind of thing would be a no-brainer for people. Like if you say you can't afford an AF-15 on your own, but you could for $20 have a share of an AF-15 or a basket of Silver Age keys that follow the market. I mean, that kind of thing, it's got to happen. I mean, I just feel like it's an idea that time has come for, and no one's done it yet. So you heard it here first.
Yeah, well, I would love to see the day where one day that Goldin might be brokering, comics in the digital space. I mean, maybe one day, and if it happens, I'm guessing you're going to be the guy that makes it happen.
It's on my to-do list. It's one of my many ideas. It's a big list.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But for sure, it's going to be mentioned, because I think it's an idea that the more people, it's one of those things where if the right people back it, then it kind of becomes an inevitable success. Whereas if people don't back it, then it probably will fail. You know, it's one, or maybe not be as successful. The more people who believe in something like Bitcoin, right? The more people believed Bitcoin was going to be a big thing, the more it went up in value. And I just think that having bigger market players support this idea will definitely be beneficial to everybody. My final thoughts. It's been a real roller coaster the last couple of years. Not personally, but just the hobby has experienced crazy pandemic gold rush and then crashing prices. It feels to me like some sanity has returned to the market. So if people are sitting on the sidelines, looking in, going, well, I wanted to get into comics, but I'm just too anxious about it. It feels like things have stabilized. We're not seeing the crazy swings we saw 2 years ago or even 3 months ago. Things are, I would say, on a fairly even keel. So it's not a bad time if you've been sitting on the sidelines to get involved. I think this market it's certainly not going anywhere. The MCU has had a bit of a hiccup, but I think they're figuring that out. And I still think it's a very exciting market. I still think comic books are hugely undervalued compared to things like coins. And it's simply because comic collecting hasn't been around as long as coin collecting. And in 100 years' time, anything you'll be dead, but let's say 20 years' time, 20 years' time, you'll be looking at stuff that you thought was too expensive now, but you'll wish you bought it now, because I really think it's a market that's going to keep growing.
I'm so happy you said that, because I feel the same way. You know, especially looking at the sports card market. You're looking at that recent sale for that Mickey Mantle rookie card for $12.6 million, and that was just 9.5, and there's 3 10s. So you look at that, right? You're referencing that value, and you're looking over at Fantastic Four 9.6. There's only 2 of them. I mean, what's that going to sell for if it ever does sell? You know, what's a 9.0 of Action Comics 1 going to sell, or the 9.4 of Batman 1 came back on the market? So it's exciting to see that these big grails that are scarce and the highest grades are still selling for record prices, even during a bear market. It's exciting for the future for the collectibles market, in our opinion, because we look at it as one market cap.
Right, and I do think that people can learn some lessons in the last couple of years. You talk about what to avoid in the future. What should you avoid doing? What can you learn from this period? And I would say that the number one thing is, don't jump on something because it's suddenly hot. Don't get involved in a book as a speculator just because a bunch of other people are speculating. Because for everyone that does well, like the first appearance of Dr. Aphra, like there's a speculation community that's their big home run, right? I think it's Darth Vader #3 or something. For every one of those, there are 1,000 stories of people who bought 50 copies of something, and it's their dollar books or less.
Yeah.
And those suddenly hot speculation books are the ones that crash the fastest. Things like What If 10, the female Thor fantasy story from 1980-ish.
Yeah,
that went $2,000 or more at one point, and now it's back down to, I think, 700 and falling. And that was because A, there was too many of them around. B, they went too high too fast, and C, the movie kind of sucked. And it just takes one bad call to lose your money. And I just think, learn from that. There are established keys that never really suffer. They may come down a little bit when the market comes down, but over time they always go up. My number one investment piece, and I'm not an investment advisor, and don't sue me if you do badly, is go for 0.5s of mega key issues. Like, go out and find universal 0.5s, ragged copies of ASM1, AF15, Hulk 1, Journey 83. Those things they're the key to owning something that's going to go up in value, because eventually someone will always say, well, I'm just about to retire. I can afford it finally. I want to own Journey 83, first appearance of Thor, but I can't afford a good one. So what's the cheapest one I can buy? And it's the bottom feeders are always going to keep that market buoyant, and there are always going to be more of those around than the higher grade ones. And yeah, chasing the high grades, it's always going to be a fantasy for most people. But having those books is cool anyway. You can just say, like, I have an ASM1. It is a rag, but I have an ASM1. So I think that's my number one tip.
I love it. But not financial advice.
Not financial advice.
Not financial advice. It's just a fun thought.
Don't worry, we put the disclaimer on all of our content.
Yeah, you're good. Well, Ash, it was so wonderful having you on the podcast. It's been so much fun talking to you. And everyone, make sure to check out all the auctions that are happening right now and weekly at Goldin.com. And also .com. And make sure to follow them on Twitter and Instagram. Amazing content daily. Like, it's unbelievable. Go at Goldin Co. And we'll make sure to include the link down below in the details, everybody. Thanks again, Ash, for coming on.
Thanks a lot. I'll speak to you again soon, I hope.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.